G'day. It's time to get this 3D setup video done. I've been procrastinating long enough on how I'm going to do it, camera angles and stuff, and honestly, if I keep procrastinating any longer, I'm just not going to get it done. So I thought I'd just sit a camera over there and record my screen and just talk a little bit about my setup, how I went about setting up my 3D quad through Betaflight, and sort of some of the thought process that went behind it. So the main, probably the most important thing, or a few of the most important things for when you're thinking about setting up a 3D quad. You want to take a very well tuned quad, like one of your better tuned quads that you've spent a bit of time on. It's got the least D-term oscillation. It's a nice smooth flying quad, and you feel very confident about the build of it and stuff. So that's probably pretty key. Next thing, if you get it on the bench, really important, take your props off. So these guys, just take them off. Don't be a dipshit. You will hurt yourself if you leave your props on, if you're going to try messing around with 3D mode. So they're like the two keynotes. So good quad, props off. That's if you're thinking about it, that's the two main things you got to think about. Safety, just don't hurt yourself while you're playing around with this, because it is a bit of a learning curve unless you're familiar with collective pitch helicopters. Like, I spent years flying. I've got T-Rex 700s, 600s, Nitros. Like, I've got big helicopters and I know how to handle them. So I treat this like I would a 700 helicopter. Like I know it's way overboard, but that's the way I treat it, and I try not to get hurt by it. So take the props off, be careful, don't have wires and your hands running near the motors and stuff. So okay, so first thing you want to do, so bit of a backstory. This is the Betaflight F3 prototype build that I've sort of been flying on. It's got the prototype board in there, and it's just a frame I had, some old 2208s and whatnot, and I've been flying that around successfully, and I thought, well, it's time to get it onto 3D mode. So I did that, and now I've backpedaled and thought I'd just record the whole process. So the very first thing you want to do is open up BLHeli, and we're going to connect up to it and just check a few things out. Okay, so you notice every single one of my motors, or ESCs rather, is set to motor direction normal. This is very important when you're considering a 3D build. In fact, it's the most important thing in the setup really is that all of these are normal. So now that we know that they're all normal, we'll disconnect. We'll connect up to Betaflight and go to the motor tab. Why is that stuck at 1400? This has got 3D enabled. That's weird. Should not have let me connect to BLHeli like that. In any case, so yeah, your normal setup obviously won't have 3D enabled right there. So we'll go over to the motor tabs and enable that, and just quickly check our motors. So clockwise, anti. So that's correct. They're all spinning correct. Now, if at this point one, two, or more, or any of your motors are spinning in the incorrect direction to what is shown here in the motor tab, so if any of your motors are spinning the wrong direction here, it's now time to break out the soldering iron and swap two wires over on one of the motors to the ESCs. Very important. It has to be set in normal, and any changes to the motor directions need to be done in a hardware manner with the wires to the ESCs. So get onto that and pause the video, get onto that, come back, and now we can move on to the next step, which is setting up the ESCs to be bidirectional. Now, 99% of the ESCs out on the market that you've probably got in your quad today, if you've sort of built-in newish quad will be compatible with 3D mode. And you know, like I've done 3D on little B20s with 2208s. It works. It's fine. Like I've done a fair bit of testing on that, and I've not actually killed a little B20 yet. So yeah, and normal props, normal motors, like nothing special to try 3D mode out. Like you get better performance out of, you know, bigger motors and 3D props, but you don't need it to try it out. So another little bit there. Okay, so now the setup. We now slide the motor direction over to bidirectional, and that's enabling all the ESCs to spin the motors in both directions, so giving positive and negative thrust is how I talk about it. So you think about it, think of it like a helicopter, like I've said earlier, like a positive and negative thrust. It's you know, Google YouTube some videos about collective pitch helicopters and basic setup, and that'll give you a bit more of an understanding. So now all our motors, nitbit here, I've obviously got motor direction, sync or motor direction ticked. The throttle min and max values is optional. If you've calibrated your ESCs prior, just leave those alone. And the mid, just leave that at 1500, and we'll write that setup. So right, disconnect. So now our ESCs are essentially in 3D mode. We can jump back over to Betaflight and go to, we can enable 3D mode now, save that, and our ESCs are working now. Okay, so here this is probably one of the second most important, or probably the most confusing parts of the setup. Have I got that bit? Yeah, okay, good, because that's like the most confusing part, and still I don't understand that, but I'll do my best to explain my rationale behind the settings that I use. And these aren't the settings, these are just some random settings that I had. We'll find the new settings now. So we'll close that, don't save, we need a new notepad. Okay, so let's explain the 3D deadband settings. Deadband neutral is the point in which all of your motors are stopped. Now, that can be different. You'll notice that the PPM center in BLHeli was set to 1500, but it's not actually the case. You see, at 1500 all our motors are actually spinning, so a good, where do they start going in reverse? About there. So probably between 50 and 80, we'll call it 1475 for our neutral. So 1475 equals mid. Next up is our 3D deadband high. Now that's the point in which all the motors are spinning in the correct direction. So you'll notice that, say, 1489, I've got glitching, one spinning, we've got two motors spinning and two glitching out, so obviously that's a bad value. Whereas, yeah, 1500 I'll call, that's a nice idle. You don't want to be too low, so we'll call 1500 is actually our high point. So that's high equals the point at which all motors are spinning in the correct direction for normal flight. And the same goes for low, just in an opposite manner. So it's the direction in which all motors are spinning and giving negative thrust, so in opposite direction. So so we've got glitching, looking for when they all start spinning nicely. 1438 we'll call the low point. I'll just bring this back up. Got a bit of a throat thing going on, sorry about that too. Okay, so oh, now I've lost my number. What was it? $14.38. So 1438 equals low. Now for the confusing one. The 3D deadband throttle. Now, I set that to 20. My understanding of 3D deadband throttle is, it's the point, it's plus or minus mid RC, it's going to arm. Obviously, that's one. And then within the deadband, it's going to output whether you were coming into it from high or low. So, that's confusing enough, but basically what that says to me is the lower the number, the more precise your switching is going to be if the ESCs can keep up with it, or if you're smooth enough. Like if you find that you're going between mid RC a lot and it's switching a lot, you might want a higher deadband so that it's not switching in between positive and negative. But if you're confident and you're on the collective, you're smooth on the collective, transitioning between the collective, and give it a bit of time, I find the lower number is better because it defines the point. It brings the point of when it's going to switch over to a narrower beam, a narrower spectrum. So like you're going to come past this point that's this wide. Like if my deadband's this wide, it's sort of like it's a bit of if my deadband's like this wide, it's like a bit of play, whereas the smaller it comes in, it's going to switch between negative and positive thrust, if that makes sense. So I like to keep my number down as low as it can go. So get 3D. So we decided for our 3D low point, we were going to have that at 1438. For our high, what did we decide there? We decided 1500 was a good number. Hey, you don't need to be on anymore. So 1500 is a good number for high. Mid was 75, so neutral, mid 75. Now, I bet you think we're all done and we can just go flying, but we're not. We forgot another really important thing, and that's our failsafe. So let's just have a quick look at our failsafe settings and discuss. Actually, we can test as well. So failsafe settings currently set to failsafe. So drop. They've moved the actual throttle value out. Okay, so get failsafe throttle is set to 1000 US. Let's have a think about that. So we've just set our quadcopter up to have a neutral point of 1475. That's the point at which all the motors are going to stop. Now, if we go into failsafe and it decides to chuck 1000 US, well, 1000 US is our new 100% throttle in negative. So that could end up being quite hairy. Actually, I might strap my battery down if I'm going to legitimately test this, but it's hard because I'm 90% sure I've set up my failsafe to also, on the receiver side, it's sort of like I've set up a failsafe on the X4R receiver to set my disarm channel on as well. So this will be a good test as to whether this will work or not. So I might just we'll disconnect. Let's have a quick look here. So we've come into a problem. Encountered a problem. That sounds legit. What could the problem be? in our 3D setup. I need to have a successful 3D setup. Otherwise, what's the good of me? Fuck. What's going on here? Okay, so we've got... Oh, of course, I forgot to set up my quad. It's a fresh build. Notepad. Thanks for sticking around. I forgot to set up my receiver and modes and everything like that, so I'll just do that quickly now. Oh dear. Happens to the best of us. Alright. So now we should be sweet. Oh, why is that? Okay, let's have a look at that. See, our motors are giving out, which says that it's giving off a bad neutral value of 1488. That's not what we set before. I mustn't have saved my settings. 75. 1538. Okay. Now that's a successful setup. Okay. Switch it over. Success. So what I wanted to test is what will happen if I turn off my radio. I feel like if you don't have a failsafe set up for your disarm, that it's just going to go to full negative, and it could be quite hairy. So let's have a go. Okay, I feel like it went into, we're going to have to connect up here and have a look at the receiver tab and see what happened. So, AUX3 is actually still set high.
Welcome to OpenTX. Throttle warning. Switch warning. Acro. Throttle hold.
Well, there you go. So I thought my receiver was set up with a failsafe, but it wasn't. As I just proven there. Well, it might be, but it's set up in the wrong sort of failsafe. However, we were covered there, but I still feel it's going to be safer to like what I was trying to get at is like I feel like if it goes into failsafe throttle, it's bad things are going to happen, and obviously somebody's thought about that in the code and they've picked the 3D neutral to be the new failsafe throttle. I feel I'll have to double check that, but it probably doesn't hurt to put your failsafe value as your new neutral value. So if that makes sense. So if for whatever reason the code gets screwy and it decides that failsafe is 1,000 US, bad things could happen, and it's better to just cover your ass. No, good. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So no bad things happen there, which is exactly what we want. But always test your failsafe. Make sure that works. If you lose a connection there, that it's not just going to flip out and go into full positive or full negative thrust. So that's probably about as long-winded as I can make this setup video. If you're still with me, congratulations. Hopefully you've learned something, and hopefully this has helped. So yeah, see you on the next one.